Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Let's welcome our main speaker for tonight, Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm an alcoholic. And that was a good speech. It was a good talk. Yeah, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a little done in from sugar. You know, I was telling Dave, we had like about 14 pounds of cakes and cookies and stuff at the house last night. And we have a Waifs and Strays Christmas, you know, like all the guys that got nowhere to go are sponsees and sponsors, related people that sort of show up at the house. And it was good. It's always good. It's always good. I come from a very large family, so I want Christmas to have a familial feel to it. I'm not one of these ones that wants to hold up. I want to be where someplace noisier than my head. So if so you got to get a lot of people around sometimes to do that. At least I do. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy birthday. Where is he? 17? I don't know, you're 4. Where'd the angriest guy in the room go? Got a resentment and went somewhere else, huh? I come from a fairly large family. I have 97 first cousins at least. My mom had 18 brothers and sisters. They all had at least 5 kids. All the men were Catholic in the bedroom, you know, one of those. We were raised in the east end of Toronto, a little working class place. All the houses on one side of my street. We lived in one row housing. It was built by Colgate-Palmolive at the turn of the century, and all the houses are 12 foot wide. They're kind of like railway flats. And my dad used to say you could fart in the kitchen and smell it in the front bedroom. And that's true. That's true. And every Friday night, Mrs. Lawson on one side of us and Mrs. Jones on the other side of us would take all the knickknacks off their walls, because all the kitchens are all connected. Take all the little trinket stuff off the walls, because on Friday night and Saturday night, you know, there's going to be some rumbling in our kitchen. And then on Sunday afternoon, they put all the knickknacks back. Told me that when I was in my 20s. They told me that. They drank around our house on Friday nights, all working class men. They drove around, they drank around, and Friday nights we get into punch-ups, all sit around and lick their wounds on Saturday and say, we're crazy, why do we drink in the house? This is nuts. Then they go to a public house on Saturday night, get the shit kicked out of them by the neighborhood, and they go, why do we go to the public houses? You know, we should drink at home. Sunday they'd sober up and go to work on Monday. And that kind of cycle, you know, I grew up in it. I grew up in that kind of, you didn't manage anything. Nobody managed anything. We never managed money because they never had any. What managed money is not having it. You know what I mean? Dad brought his paycheck home, gave it to Mom. Mom doled it out. All the women in our house, in our family. And you drank until it was all gone. Because you only bought what you could afford, which usually was just enough, you know. I remember as a kid looking down the narrow bowling alley of a backyard we had, and I remember this one night, my sponsor told me that I had a list of things that I wanted to accomplish in my life, imaginary list of things I wanted to accomplish and attain, you know, and I thought, what the hell is he talking about? You know, this is in my first couple of years, but I remember through inventory process, you know, you start going back, and I remember this one night in this bowling alley of a backyard of mine, looking in, and my dad was sitting at their little kitchen table. I could see him through the window. My mom was trying to get everyone's attention by slamming a cupboard door. Her 2 brothers had my dad's only friend, Al, because my dad had no brothers. He had one brother got killed during the Second World War. He was one of 2 children. my mom's two brothers had my dad's only friend, Al Atkins, who's still alive, and had him against the wall and was groin punching him. One had him by the throat, and they were punching him in the balls. They were just. My Uncle Bill was in a fetal position under the kitchen table, shivering, and my dad was not making any noise. He was sitting there, staring off vacantly, and just tears. I remember they were puddling on the table, and I remember praying. That's the first time I ever remember praying in my life. That's where it came up in one of the inventories. I remember praying that I wanted another family. You know how you want another high school or another town to start over? I just want a clean break. I remember this poor little guy that I was. I wanted another family. I knew something was wrong. And I remember I'd been out by this little shed that was in the backyard that Dad made for pots, and I was leaning against it, and the shed was only about 2 feet tall, so how old was I? I have to be like 5, 6, you know? Because I remember I was in short pants. So that's my first prayer that I remember saying. God, give me a new family. You know? That's messed up. And that's where the list came from. When I grow up, I'm going to have a house you can walk around. When I grow up, I'm going to drive a Ford. Because all my family anyone, if you could afford a car, had a Chevy. I'm going to drink those beers with the different colors on them. I'm not going to. They drink Molson's and Labatt's. I wouldn't go to. I'll drink IPA or something, you know. I'll drink when the bootlegger come around. They used to say, "Do you want this? Do you want that?" They'd all, you know, bootlegger name down some stuff. And my uncles, my dad, my grandfather always say, "No, just give us the old malt of Queen Anne, you know, low grade whiskeys and stuff like that." I'll buy the stuff that they first mention. You know, all my lists were alcoholic. They were exactly as my family's, but they were in different quantities and different numbers, you know. I accomplished all those things. I ended up with a house you could walk around with. I ended up with a garage. I remember I had 6 impaired driving children. I'm not going to go too much into drinking and using. I drank a lot. I used a lot. Probably more than some in this room. Probably less. Doesn't really matter. I ran out of holes to stick cocaine. Drugs are part of my thing. I would not use a rig. I would not shoot dope. I didn't want to be a junkie, but I put it in every other hole in my body. And I mean every other hole. I don't recommend it. Can cause a lot of irritation. It was not a moral ethical issue. I had to get it into me. Couldn't snort it anymore because my face would swell up. I had an allergic reaction to cocaine. Couldn't smoke it anymore because my lungs were all pleural. So I got some of that dippy-doo hair gel stuff, and I mixed it, and it worked. It was just like getting a finger right up the back of the brain. But I'll tell you, and I had to go to work. That's why I did it. I had to go to work, and I could not do anything. I could not do anything. I could not do anything. But about 4 hours later, I had to get the biggest tube of Preparation H. And it was on a film. I'm an actor, and it was on a film in 1981, and I'll screw it up. If you ever see a film called Visiting Hours, that's the film I did it on. And I play this killer, goes around trying to get at a woman in a hospital, and I kill all these. God, it's a sick world out there. I killed 14 women in that film, and I got over 600 marriage proposals in the mail. You know. But what happened was your butt got itchy. So I'd, like, when nobody was looking, I'd sort of back into a corner. And because I didn't want, like, you can't be, like, reaching down and stuff. And my drive, they'd given me this green kid as a driver. I remember on the first day shooting, he said, I want to be, I'm your driver, and I want to be, you know, good at it. My first time, I said, look, I don't need a goddamn driver. I need a friend. Everything I do, you do. This poor son of a bitch. He used the dippity-doo too, you know. And he'd been backing into corners too, so we were doing this one shot. I don't know why I'm going into that. We were doing this one shot, and the DOP said, cut, cut, cut. What is all over his ass? And I thought, and what had happened is I'd left this white plaster mark on the crack of my pants because I kept butting into the set. And they said, oh, I must have bumped into something. They said, look, his driver's got it too. His name's Glenn. He got 6 years, went out again. Got 4 years, went out again. Now I think Glenn's got like about 4 years. He's up in Montreal. That poor bugger. But that was near the end of my drinking and using. I got that list that year when I got that film. I'd done a couple of films. I was in Canada. I made more money in 1 year than my father had made in his whole life. It was absolutely disgusting. I'd got everything I wanted. I had 6 impaired driving charges, so I couldn't drive. But I had to have a car with one of those Batman doors, you know, like you sit there and I'd stand there. I remember standing with a bottle with the clicker, watching the door go up, watching the door go down, watching the door go up. And then I remember when it opened, my brother was standing in there, and I went, how did he get in there? You know, he'd come in the back door of the garage. I went, Billy, look, you can do this. You know, my brother's now got 18 years of sobriety. Got my whole family, except for one of us is sober, the 5 kids. I'm the oldest of 5. But drinking, I had 6 impaired driving charges. I was suicidal. I tried to kill myself 3 different times before I got to the program. I'd like to talk about some high points and low points. Went out with a girl for 8 years on weekends. She got pregnant. We got married, and I think looking back, we know each other right now. She's the assistant chief of police in Toronto now. She wasn't when I met her. Adrian's mom. We're convinced that we got together in the universe, you know, that higher power that's in the gaps put us together so that we could have our daughter. And a daughter who I absolutely love, would die for. And my ex-wife, my oldest daughter's mother, was a dyed-in-the-wool Al-Anon. She would hang all her control freak. She would like clean the ashtrays when you're halfway through a cigarette. You know what? Hang all her blouses, you know, like the short ones at one end, about 1.5 inches apart, then the medium ones, then the long ones, then the shorts, then the slacks, then the skirts. Everything was like, and I'm like the circus freak that I am, you know. It's how we ever got together. It's amazing. But I was looking after Finley. That's the next one. I was looking after Adrian one night when she was about somewhere between 1 year and 18 months old, and I'd already left once and thought, maybe I got it wrong. Came back again to the marriage, and she was out doing something, and I very rarely got my daughter to myself. You know, I love her dearly. And we were living in a duplex with my sister who lived downstairs with her kids and stuff, and a place we'd bought and renovated to make 2 places. And I remember I was watching a hockey game. I wasn't loaded. I wasn't resentful. I went in to see why the baby was crying, and when I left the nursery, I realized I'd punched Adrian in her crib. And she was somewhere between 1 year and 18 months old. Now, I am not somebody that I knew from that moment on. I was insane. I had done shit up to that point. You know, I'd hurt people. But I thought, somebody who went in there and did not plan on doing that, you know, and ended up doing it against all my will, he's insane. So I became a father at arm's length for years. I called my sister up downstairs. I locked myself in the bathroom beside the kitchen. Took the phone in on the long cord. Said, Wendy, could you come up and look after Adrian? I'm sick. Didn't tell anybody. Never told anyone until I got sober, until I did my 4-step. Things I would never tell anybody. My mom, when I was 15, my mom wouldn't say shit if she had a mouthful of it. And my dad was the drinker, and all her brothers were the drinker. And when my dad drank to a point where he could no longer function, I don't know how he did it, he went white-knuckled, and my mom started drinking. And she seemed to start where my dad left off. And I remember I had a full-time job at night when I was 11 and a half years old, and we needed the money. Both my sister and I worked when we were teenagers. And I'd go to work every night at 6. I had to be there at 6 and work till 2 in the morning and then come home. But I had to rush home from school and everything to get shit done before I go to work. And I remember this one, I get this phone call and said, your mom's in the laneway. And I went, what? And hung up. you know. So when we live in these rural, like I said, rural housing, there's all these laneways, you know, the English, the way they design shit, it's very anal, so it's all gridded. And I have some resentments, city planners. But, and I found my mom, and she'd been urinating on her, and she'd crapped on herself, and she was crawling blind in a blackout down the laneway, and she lost her shoes, and her knees were all bloody. And on the cinders, and I was trying to get her up and into the house because I wanted to get her in the house before Dad came home, because that was our job, was to maintain my older sister and I. We were the two oldest, and I somehow in my head I thought he wouldn't love her, or they would break up or something. I don't know, you know when you're like under 15, and when she wouldn't move quick enough, I started kicking her. I was so frightened. So I kicked her and kicked her. When she came out of her blackout a couple of days later, when she was like, we got her in the house, my sister bathed her, got her into the bed, and I took off for work. It was just, I remember being numb to it. I couldn't feel anything. I had to get her home. So when she came around a couple of days later and she had broken ribs and everything like that and a cracked sternum, she thought she'd done it when she was in the blackout. I had all this shame for her. I never told her it was me. I never said it was me. I carried that one around until I did my inventory. Oh. I'll give you one of the suicide attempts, because I think suicide's a big deal. A lot of people in these rooms don't talk about it. I had some that, this is kind of a funny one. I used to get depressed. I get depressed in Canada, you know, like from November through February, it gets gray back east. It ain't like the postcards, you know, with the snow and stuff. Maybe some of you people, it turns brown very quick, very gray. And in Toronto, there's like, it'd be like, kind of like these expressways, the Gardner Expressway, there's the 400, there's the 401, and then down the Don Valley. It's a loop. And I used to go out, and when I got depressed, I'd get like a fairly large bottle of Smirnoffs or whatever I could get. And I'd drive the circuit at 2 in the morning after the bars close. You know, I'd just drive. Because I couldn't sleep. I didn't trust myself to be alone. I get depressed. And it'd be kind of like going along the 10 up the 405, across the 134, 101, down the 170, hit the 10 and go around. You drive around, you know. And I do have full tank on that, you know, and my old car. And I would stay out of trouble, because if I stopped anywhere, I was going to get in trouble. I mean, you know, I'd done a little time. I broke a cop's jaw and did some, got 3 years for that and got out after 6 months. Didn't mean to do it. Seriously, I didn't mean to do it. It was the first time I ever heard the word amends. It was when I got my sentence. They made me go up to he was still in the hospital. I had to make an amends in front of him and his family. And I went up and I said, I had to stand in the hospital room and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what happened. And I'll try never to do it again. Because the judge pointed out, and amends is not saying you're sorry. Amends is changing your behavior. So you got to basically say, you won't do this anymore. And don't say it unless you mean it. And I ain't never going to hit a cop again. If you hadn't been hitting Fred with that stick, I wouldn't have hit you, you know. I didn't say that, but that's what I thought. But what happened one night, I was driving back around and around, I've been drinking, and I remember the depression. And when I got depressed and I wanted to commit suicide, maybe something to identify this, I wanted chrome black. I used to call it chrome black. I didn't think about what people would do. I didn't think about what other people, how they're going to find me, what they're going to say at a memorial. I wanted the noise. I wanted my brain somewhere else. I used to get an image, and it used to relax me for a long time. I get an image of what I call chrome black. It was chrome black. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like, you can almost put your hand into it. That's what I wanted. And I used to get it on some drugs and alcohol, but only rarely. And I was driving around that night, and I thought, that's what I want. And I remember in a movie called Lightning Strikes Again, Sinatra's driving along in the frozen rain, and it was frozen rain, and he shuts off the windshield wipers. It's very dramatic, you know. And I was on the 401, and they were building it, and at that time it was a 16-lane highway, 8 on either side, and they were still building it. So I thought, piss on it, I'll do that. Turned off the windshield wipers. It's like 3, 4 in the morning. And it was like a 64 Chevy, you know. So I shut off the windshield wipers and let go of the wheel. Driving along, because there's all this construction going on, and I stepped on the gas. Because there's nobody else out there, and you can hear the tires on the sleet, you know, and all this stuff, and the windshield started to freeze up, and I thought, it's going to happen. And I remember thinking I got about a quarter left, and it was a quarter of a bottle, and I was drinking it, and I felt the road start to bump, you know, and I thought, here we go, you know. And all of a sudden, it was like this big swing, and I kind of bounced off the door, and then there was another swing, and the engine started roaring, and I went forward, and I was still drinking, and I got rid of and it was empty, and I said, this is going to time out great, and I swear to God. And all of a sudden, there was this huge kind of plowing, crashing sound, and then I smacked the windshield, or the steering wheel, and the top of the thing with my head here, and split my mouth open and everything. Came back, and the motor was roaring, and I wasn't going anywhere, and I couldn't see anything because it was all the windows. So I turned the car off and get the window down, and I look out. I come out through the window, and I didn't dress for winter. I was one of those guys always in denial. I had like a little summer jacket on, and pointed shoes with the little, and I get out, and what had happened? You could see my tire tracks. I'd gone around the heavy construction equipment, past the cement pylons, down through the wash, around some more shit, missed all the stuff, and I'm out in a crusted field of snow. And I missed I can't even commit suicide. And I'm standing there with an empty bottle of vodka and summer clothes, and at 3 in the morning. And I remember wandering out onto the road, and what the fuck? This is nuts, And this cab kind of went by, and I went, hey, And the son of a bitch didn't stop, so I took the empty bottle and I threw it at him, as he was going by. And the Ontario Provincial Police cars kind of look like cabs. And that was my 5th impaired driving charge. They took my ass to jail, Got 18 months for that one. It was out in 4. Yeah, get the point. I'm kind of an alcoholic addict. I mean, I really never planned on living past 32. My dad told me once after sobriety, he says that I made my mom cry at my 16th birthday because I said, now it's half over. I could not comprehend living past 32. 32 seemed like ancient to me. It was ancient, What happened is, by the time 1982 came around, from 81 was my high point, like that film where I was finding holes to put drugs in, and I finished off. I owed so much money. I could never stay ahead of anything, because I think a part of my shame was with money. It was like when I said I made more in a year than my dad made in his whole life. I would get it, and if I couldn't ingest it in some way, I pushed it away from me, threw it at family members. I was one of those guys that rather than show up, I'd throw money at you. Won't drive you somewhere, send you in a cab. Bravado, ego, I had nothing, and I hadn't filed income tax since 1986 or 76, because I figured I'm going to be dead in 82. I'm born 1950, 32. I'm not. What's the sense of paying income tax? That's a dummy's way of doing things, and what happened was I was unable to work. I was bloated, completely out of shape. I'd done about 37, 40 films in Canada at the time. I got in American agents, but I couldn't last in big American cities. I'd go to New York City, and I'd last 7 days at the most. They'd get me a hotel room in some swanky hotel. I'd go over and stay at the Taft, and check into the other hotel for my messages. I'd stay until I used to pull the blinds in the Taft and turn on the TV into an off station and turn up the noise of the white snow on the screen, because that was comforting. And just sit there and smoke my dope and drink, and then I go back to Canada. And so what happened was I ended up trying to pull a drug deal together with what was coke paste in those days, very heavy in kerosenes and stuff. And they were bringing it up the West Coast into Vancouver in Portland cement bags. And you could buy like a 50-pound bag of this stuff and then cook it down yourself. It was very complicated. I don't know what the hell I was doing. I was a lousy drug dealer. And I borrowed money from 2 different groups to buy this shit, and there was somebody else involved in it, but I got blamed for it because I remember blacking out, and I'm told that I gave half the deal away in a blackout, and half the money got to me, and the other half I was told looking for me. So I broke into the only guy that was still talking to me. He wasn't around. He kept all his shit in the freezer. I took his money and his drugs, went to the airport, and jumped on a plane and came to Los Angeles, because my way of thinking was, no, I look lousy in white. Everyone knows I hate Los Angeles. They'll never find me here. And I was in Dantana's one night, bumming drinks. Been here about a month. I cashed in my return airfare. I had no money. My credit was gone. Family is not returning calls. Hadn't worked in about 11 months. I was like about 260 pounds. I was yellow. My butt did not close the last 6 months of my drinking and using. If you do not eat vegetables and fruit, it's an involuntary situation. The acidity makes your butt close. If you live on bar nuts and cheap wine and drugs, your butt will not close. I think I invented Depends. Because I used to wear kids' diapers. I'd cut diapers on. I'm talking 81, 82. I used to stick them down on my pants and stuff, you know. And that's another butt thing. I got a butt thing going tonight. And I was in Dantana's one night, and this guy said that Slauko's looking for you. He tapped me on the shoulder, and I spun around, and he said, no, I'm just telling you. I think you're a good guy, but Slauko's looking for you. And I started running. I ran and kind of squirreled my way away into an apartment of somebody who I lied to. I was supposed to look after the plants. When I got there, the door was locked. The key wouldn't work properly, so I kicked the door in. I said, I'll fix it before they come back. And I hid out there for about a month or so. And I was stealing money out of piggy banks and borrowing, you know, whenever. And I went out on I can't remember what day of the week it was. I went out with rolls of pennies in my pockets one night. And even Sonny had stopped hanging out with me. And Sonny was like fairly low in those days. And I'm just somebody David knows. And I came to with a half gallon of either vodka or tequila, a bottle of green chartreuse with a cork in it, and a Glad bag full of dope, but that much. So it was about a quarter ounce. And now the green chartreuse bottle had fuzz on it. You know how you put a bottle over a kitchen stove and it gets fuzz on it, it gets grease, cooking grease on it, then the dust settles on it? Well, that's what the green chartreuse was, this chartreuse shit. And so I know I'd been in somebody's kitchen. I went out with rolls of penny. I figured about $3,200 worth of this, so I'd robbed somebody. So I stayed for about 2 days on this stuff. I'd do a little dope, drink a little bit, look to see if the sun was up, look to see if the moon was up. Didn't get really loaded, didn't get really out of it, and took a couple of rolls of pennies when all the stuff went down to the 7-Eleven. And this is in West Hollywood. It was on Havenhurst. Went down, and this was a borrowed apartment where I'm supposed to be watering the plants, and the plants are all dead by now. And I went down, and there was this, it was middle of the night, and there was this fellow, an Orthodox Jewish fellow in the 7-Eleven, or maybe he wasn't there, who knows. But, and I remember him having a roll of cash in his hands, and I was going to get cigarettes. I had these rolls of pennies, and I remember thinking, okay, and I went outside and around the corner, right down the corner to see which way he was going to go. I was going to just give him a little heave, you know. And so I was hanging out beside the dumpsters, and he came out, and as I had what I now understand was another moment of clarity. I had a moment of clarity, which is, I'm about to roll this guy, and this is not what I grew up to be. This is not what I grew up to be. You know, that incomprehensible demoralization to the bone in that moment. And I'd had them before. I remember having them before. I had them when I hit my daughter in her crib. I had them with my mom. I had them with the car wrecks. I had them all my life. But I remember thinking, this doesn't work. But moments of clarity don't last unless they're followed up with some kind of program. Nobody ever stepped forward with a program, you know? And 12 or 24 hours later, I would think, I remember like stealing all the money out of all my friends' purses and wallets while they were all in the washroom one night. We were all in this restaurant, this fairly highbrow place. And then I took everything out and went to the washroom. When I came back, I was just as outraged as they were that we'd all been robbed, you know? And then when I came to, after, and this is years before I bottomed out, and then I came to, I remember thinking, a couple of days later, I went, what a piece of shit you are, Michael. What a piece of shit. Your way of doing things doesn't work. These are friends. These are, you know, people have had you in your house and hiding out, you know, trying to maintain on my own, you know, not telling anybody about it. And I remember some period of time later going, I didn't take the credit cards, I just took the cash. Some time later thinking, they all owe me a drink. Son of a bitches, they all owe me money. The rationalization, that phenomenon of before the first drink, that phenomenon that happens way back inside, which makes it okay to one more time to try it out there, happened. And within 2 days, I was out and running again, thinking, screw it, I'll pay them. I'll buy them drinks. I don't have to tell them. I'll settle it up. I'll buy them some nice presents at Christmas when I get the big score, you know. That's what happened again. I had another one of those moments of clarity in between those dumpsters, right where Frank and Lisa used to live, right beside their place on Havenhurst? Whatever. And I keep referencing David. I've known him a long time. And I didn't do it. I didn't roll this guy. He went shuffling by, and I ran back to this little apartment, and I remember hiding in the back, terrified. And what happened was a knock at the door is the next thing I remember, and it was some time later. And it was somebody I'd stopped hanging out with 5 years before because they had a drinking and using problem. I stopped hanging out with this person because they were scummy, and I did not want to be identified with them. Evidently, I'd called them in a blackout to see if they could help me get a job. I'm told, all I remember of this person at the front door was that their smile hurt. I swear to God, that's all I remember, their smile hurt. And I'm told that I said, "How come you look so good?" And I'm told they said to me, "I have not done drugs or alcohol in 3.5 years." And I said, "What are you taking to do that?" I'm told that they helped me get dressed. I had 2 pairs of jeans, and they were both looked black. And I had been scratching for a long time, and I had rice paper skin, you know, you used to go like that and stay up. And I was all kind of open sores, so all the jeans were kind of like caked on the inside. I was yellow. Cale used to tell me, this guy that helped me in early sobriety, that I had these 2 peeled patches on my back right above my kidneys. Anyone that's like really fried the kidneys, you know that the skin, they get hot and the actual skin changes. I was a mess, you know. And I was wearing those cut-down diapers. That's why I look lousy in white, man. You don't wear white when you're wearing cut-down diapers. but So where they took me was to Architects of Adversity on a Thursday afternoon. And I remember sitting there thinking, we got there after, I don't remember being there on time, I don't know. All I remember is there was a guy sharing that he had 6 of something sober. 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, who knows, 6 of something. He was crying, not one of those snotty cries, but just sobbing that he could not sexually satisfy his significant other, boyfriend, wife, girlfriend, I have no idea. And he was suicidal, and everyone was laughing. And that's what I remember. And I think all I remember that from that meeting is because I had my runs with suicide. I knew about not sexually satisfying people. I had not been successfully with somebody sexually in like 5 or 6 years, including myself. You know, you eat enough Yellow Jacks and Black Beauties and stuff, you know, and crank. This woman I live with, I used to make overtures, sexual overtures to her, praying she'd say no so I could blame her. Because so much was tied up in my sexual performance. Yet couldn't happen when you're doing all these drugs and stuff. But so I remember that part. The suicide I remember. The crying I remember because the only time I ever cried when I was around people was to manipulate you. I never remember crying in front of anyone unless it was to get some kind of sympathy or some kind of manipulation. And this guy wasn't. I knew he was straight out he was heartbroken. And the laughter, and I've heard it up here, and for the people that don't understand it, it's the truth. They were not laughing at him. I don't know what they laughed. There was a new kind of laughter for me because they weren't laughing at him. And I drank again that night, and I went to this person's house, I'm told, at about 2 or 3 in the morning, knocked on the door, and said to them, "I'm an alcoholic." And I'm told they put their hand over my mouth and said that was good enough. And that they picked me up, not to drink and use until 7:30 next night. And I kind of remember, they let me stay on their couch, then they took me back to where I was staying. And they picked me up the next night and kind of checked on me all day long. And I remember kind of getting indignant, like they're not going to show up. And they showed up. They showed up around 7:30. I was standing outside, took me to a meeting, stuck me in a corner beside this ginormous guy who was sweating and didn't know what was going on. And everyone was like a big room with a lot of people. Nobody can remember where they took me, but I mean, it was one of like those Friday night meetings. And I remember how I qualified in this program was it got around out-of-towners, and they said, "Are there any out-of-towners?" You know how we do it, the preamble? And the big sweaty guy elbowed me and said, "You're from out of town?" I went, "Yeah." And they said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Tirana." And they said, "What's your name?" I said, "Michael." Then we all waited. You know how we wait? And I'm sitting there like looking around like, what did I do wrong? And the big sweaty guy elbowed me and leaned in real close and he said, "Say you're a goddamn alcoholic or we'll be here all goddamn night." And I said, "Well, I'm an alcoholic." And we went, "Yay." And then the meeting went on. That was my first true meeting of AA. That's September 23rd, 1983. I got a sponsor the next morning. They sat on me all that night. I don't remember anything a lot about my first few days, other than in the first week or so. I was just in morning meetings. They picked me up, take morning meetings, noon meetings, evening meetings, keep me hustling around. And it turned out, yeah, key didn't fit in that apartment. When I was somewhere in my first 6 weeks of sobriety, it was the wrong apartment. That's why the key didn't fit. The people that owned the apartment came home. And I happened to be sitting there with a guy that had 6 years of sobriety, and he did all the talking, and he paid for the damages on the apartment, and so I killed the plants in 2 apartments. Never did find that other apartment. It was in the complex, and Peter J. paid the damages, and I said, "How can you do this? You don't know me." He says, "You'll either pay me back or you'll drink and use and die again." You know, so it's a safe bet. Either I help you or you're going to die. And I went, wow, you know. And I was so humbled by it. He said, "You got somewhere to stay?" And I said, "Yeah," and I didn't. So I stayed in San Vicente Park. And my biggest decisions in those days was which bush to sleep under. And I didn't know there was a behavioral way of doing things. And I was washing my hands in the water fountain, and a guy named Mingo came up behind me and belted me and knocked me down on the ground and said, "We don't do that here. We wash over there in the corner. This is for drinking." And he had 30 days. And we go to the morning meeting, and I used to hide in the washroom at the log cabin because I didn't have any money to go for coffee. And I'd do the cleanup commitment and stuff like that, and then hide in the washroom because I was so ashamed of not having any money. I was afraid somebody would say, "You want to go for a coffee?" And Mingo, I just talked to him the other night. He's got 12 years now. He called me out. You ever been in a log cabin in Hollywood, West Hollywood? There's a little men's washroom. And I was standing there waiting for everyone to leave, you know. And I heard, "You're a liar." And I went, "Oh." I turned around, and it was Mingo standing in the bathroom door. And he fills the door real good, you know. And I tried to posture. I remember thinking, "Oh, yeah? I'm a liar, huh?" And he said, "Yeah, you said you're okay, and you're not." And I didn't know what to do. And he said, "Come on, we're going for coffee." And I said, "I got no money." He says, "I got no money either." And I went, "How are we going?" He said, "Shut up." Took me outside. And he goes up to Peter J. and he says, "I'm taking him for coffee." And Peter said, "Good. I think you guys should go for coffee." He says, "Give me $5. And Peter said, "Here, take a 10 and stay a little longer." You know. Peter became my intermediate sponsor, and another guy named Kale. I lied. I haven't got much time here. I've talked too much about drinking and using here, but I did my first 4-step. I got great advice on my first 4-step. I got told, write it and make a decision to do your 5th step after you've written your 4th step. And that was cool. So I wrote everything down, and I went to read it to this guy named Kale. And I looked at him across the table, and I didn't trust that he would understand what was in this 4-step. So as I was going through it, I changed things. Didn't mention the sexual abuse. Didn't mention some of the stealing of family things. Didn't mention some of the brutalities. Generalized through it. He didn't know, you know? And it says the 4th-step and the 5th-step process is the end of isolation. I know that to be a fact because the reverse happened for me. When I lied through my first 5th-step, the warmth and the safety of these rooms disappeared. I started coming to meetings late because I felt ashamed. I started leaving early because I felt ashamed. And I was up at Yucca on a Wednesday afternoon, pretty close to like going crazy. And I heard this guy speaking, and I got a couple of coffees and got up close to look in his eyes because I thought he just doesn't seem smart enough to be making this shit up. And it was Pat H. And after the meeting, I went up to him and I said, "You know, I don't have a sponsor. My sponsor's left town," which was true. And I thought, I'll test him out, you know. And he said, "What's going on?" So you know how you ever test people? You ever tell them a truth? It's okay to tell them. It's kind of a secret, but it's not really. You don't really tell them the big secret. You just tell them a secret that's so if they screw with it, you know they're a piece of shit and you don't have to be around them. Does that make sense? But anyway, he said, "What's going on?" I said, "I did my fifth step and I lied all the way through it because I was testing him, you know." And I thought he'd say, "You dumb fuck," you know, like, "What are you doing? Like, dude, pull some authority figure on me, you know." And what he did is he reached out and he put his arm around me and he said, "Oh my God, that must really hurt." And I burst into tears. And he's been my sponsor for 20 years, you know, and he has taken me through the steps countless times, gently. I can stand, and I wish this relationship with a sponsor to everybody. I can stand in front of him. He's the guy that David was trying to set fire to his chair. He's not always been that spiritual. He's got about 5 years more than me. I can stand in front of him physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally naked. No, he will not hurt me. And I have been able to say things to him. And as a sponsor, I think that's my responsibility. My responsibility is to be a safe, loving place for my guys and the people that I meet in these meetings to come to. Not to be a judgmental guy, to come to a safe place to come to. That's my job. It's almost like being a loving parent. I see everything in life now since I've been in the program a couple of decades as parenting. My job is to be a safe place for my wife to turn, who I met in these meetings, who has 9 months more than me. We had our first date on my first anniversary. We moved in together on the week of my second anniversary. We got married the week of my third anniversary. I quit smoking 7 years ago. She got pregnant. We have a 6-year-old. She got postpartum. I started smoking again. I also went to Al-Anon. And I quit again last June, and the adventure keeps unfolding. Since I've been sober, the first one in my gene pool ever to get to A, and I'll finish with this. The year after me, my sister Wendy got sober. The year after her, my brother Billy got sober. My sister Beverly, the youngest of the 5, she got sober 6 years ago. The man she was married to, Howie, he got sober the same week. The little girl that I punched in her crib when she was under 18 months old, when I was 5 years sober, her mother, the cop, suggested she come live with me because it seemed our house was more emotionally stable. She has 8.5 years of sobriety. She's the secretary of one of the meetings I started in the Tar Pits. We started it back in '83, you know. She's secretary of that on Friday nights. She has a whole raft of women she sponsors. There are 16 members of my family sober now, and a whole bunch in Al-Anon that I believe should be here, but that's a judgment. And that's another kind of meeting. God bless.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.